Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Idea Roastery. I'm Jason.
And I'm Herman.
So, Herman, I want you to tell me about the last time you had existential dread about not getting enough done in the day.
So that's actually something that I deal with on a semi-consistent basis. To be fair, my job is great. I'm my own boss, and I get to work on things that interest me. But in a way, because I don't technically have to work on anything, I have to decide every day to work on something, which is both a blessing and a curse. It means that everything that I do has to be self-motivated. I have to decide to work on this project. I have to decide to open my emails. I have to decide to do all these things. And there's no real immediate punishment if I don't. And so I have gone through periods where I've just kind of like puttered about doing the bare minimum, feeling a bit directionless and aimless. And it's not a good feeling.
No, I can't. I can imagine. And has it evolved over time? I'm having been doing solo stuff for I'd say not even a year really. I mean, I've like the first few months I basically took off and then I did like some startup-y stuff. But now I'm kind of like sort of focusing on building and doing my own thing and I also have like this like what do I do? Like what do I focus on? What do I get done? Like, should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? Did you ever get out of that? Or are you still in that phase where you kind of indecisive about what to tackle next? Or are you still, is it something that you think it has evolved because you've been doing it a lot longer? Maybe I would say like 5 years now, 6 years, maybe even more that you've been working solo?
Well, I've had to figure out how to do it, and interestingly enough, like despite not having to work, when I say having to work, I mean like over a long period of time, I do need to work because if I let my projects stagnate, that'll affect my income, and then I'll be out on the street. But because I don't have an immediate, like I don't have a boss breathing down my neck, I don't have KPIs or anything like that that I need to meet. I have had to develop my own strategies for making sure that I do keep doing the things that are good. This for both my company and for myself. Mental health, physical health, career, or career isn't the right one, but my work, my occupation, and I think that the underlying truth that I've uncovered, or truth for myself that I've uncovered, is that there is a fundamental difference between motivation and commitment, right?
Hmm.
And commitment, you could also say discipline, but in the beginning, I used to rely a lot on motivation. And motivation comes quite easily when you're working on something interesting and exciting, and it's new, and you're making progress every single day, right? But 2 years down the line is, well, not even 2 years down the line, even in the initial stage, motivation does disappear. It is a fleeting mistress. And so the way that I've come to think about it is that when motivation strikes, I use that to create commitments, right? And then the commitments are the things that I do. And this is both baked. This is more of like a routine thing. So it is a thing that I try to do every day or every work day. And I find reasoning about doing things like that to be very very powerful in its own way. Very like I get a lot of stuff done. I'm actually incredibly productive, and I think there is also the additional benefit of I know that this pays back dividends to me because I'm working on my own things. In some cases it's harder to say the same thing about a job where if you go over and above, it might not pay back to you. And you could say the same thing about, me. I mean, like I spent uh, 4 hours a day working on a feature that I never shipped because I decided that actually serving serving zip bombs to malicious web scrapers may be against the law.
Oh no. Well, that's a good use case for not doing something, right? You mentioned there I guess, the sort of connection between motivation and discipline. Maybe to get a little bit more into the tactics and like how your day is structured, and which one came first? Did you start off with having a routine, and then you developed the routine, and then that allowed you to slot in sort of work into your routine? Or was it that you were motivated first of all to do these things and then you developed the routine as you just started doing more and more work? Or what is your kind of like day like? Because we all know that you go to the gym fairly regularly, but was that something that came first, that you focused on, or how did you kind of come to getting into this kind of stride? And I acknowledge that it's maybe there are obviously like fluctuations in the routine. I have them as well. But what did you get? What did you do first? Like, what was the first steps?
Mm. Well, so my routine has definitely evolved a lot over the last 6 years, but for the last three, it's been fairly consistent. Um, and I think the basis of it is that I try to improve my routine. You know, like if we think about it in a purely like a startup processistical manner, it's like what works, what doesn't work, what can be improved, and then kind of going from there. But not as rigid of a structure. So, for example, my day currently and for the last three-ish years has been waking up at around 6 a.m. If I wake up before 6 a.m., I spend some time with myself, either knitting or writing or just like chilling out and making some coffee and watching the sunrise. No, no devices. I also don't like we don't have devices in the bedroom um, because, and certainly no checking phones and everything because that's an immediate way to take everything good and just kind of fixate it on your phone. Um, and at around 6, I make some coffee and I wake up Emma. And then we spend 40 minutes together, just kind of like either chatting or sitting in the quiet, watching the sun come up and enjoying our coffee. And we kind of like check in with each other about the day. Oh, I've got the meeting this point and I need to be at this place at this time. And then we head off to the gym together and have a 45-minute workout. And then I get back home, have a breakfast and a shower, and then I get to my computer. Right. Now,
What time is this? Like usually?
oh, it's probably around 8, right?
Wow. Okay.
Like there is method to this madness. Um I know that I work my best when I ease into the day like that. And so, an hour for waking up and spending time with Emma, and another hour spent just taking care of both my mental and my physical health. I kind of see going and exercising and having breakfast and grooming as being, a holistically beneficial thing.
Sort of device free still, or is
Pretty
have
much. Like
you?
I do
Yeah.
use my phone to take workout notes, but I'm certainly not doing any work on my phone while I'm at the gym. I'm not checking emails. I'm not trying to get abreast of things. Uh, I don't even listen to podcasts or music when I'm at the gym. Instead, I just kind of focus on my lifts, and I think about my day. And because I've had like this really long time of spending time with myself and thinking, I kind of pre-plan what it is that I'm going to do for the day, and I work on problems that I know that I'm going to deal with during the day, and it's also very like cathartic, and it feels right, right? I used to listen to podcasts at the gym, and I realized like I came out of the gym and my mind wasn't as quiet, whereas now I come out of the gym and my mind's like focused and quiet. It's actually quite nice. And then I sort of every single one of my days at my computer by just doing a little write in my journal, sort of checking in with myself. And I've been doing that for the last 10 years. And, most of the time it's just like a couple of sentences. What happened? How do I feel about it? Whatever. I think every, every good tradition, it kind of has some form of this, it could be like Buddhist meditation. I even think that like Christian prayer is a form of taking stuff that's in your mind and verbalizing it, vocalizing it. And in order to do that, you kind of have to interrogate it. And so I do that, and then I hop into my work, and I actually don't check my emails first thing in the morning because they have a way of derailing me. Because I'm dealing with support requests, I'm doing this, doing that. So instead, I start on the thing that is the most important on my to-do list, and I try and have that. I try and put in like a good 2 or 3 hours of work before lunch. And then after lunch, I do my emails and other stuff like that. And as I find that as soon as I open my emails, the day becomes like more complicated, right? Like my attention gets a little bit split. So I do like to have a good, let's call it 3 hours in the morning just to focus on shipping a new feature, writing an article, something that requires deep work. And then after lunch, like my day is whatever is made of it. I don't really have any explicit plans for it.
And have you always been a morning lark, as they call it? Have you always
Actually, no, I used to sleep in until like 10.
because that I think is my problem, right? Because I have a similar, I don't have the exact sort of mechanistic routine that you might have, but I'm still trying to do like workouts in the morning, and I'm still trying to do like a little bit of time and before I actually start work. But my problem is that I wake up at like 8 or 8:30. And then that's like, I mean, I take about the same time, like maybe an hour or two to go to the gym and get my, protein shake and have some coffee and stuff like that. And what I'm finding is that I'm only getting into work at like 11, 12 on some days. And at that point, it's kind of like, lunchtime, midday. You've only got about 6 hours of day left. And also you're like already through the day in a sense. And I think maybe it's a curse, and obviously going to bed a little bit later means that you're not as sort of primed the next day. And I think it's a bit of a curse because it's like there's a lot more days to get started. But it's also what I've noticed is like being in a sort of longer term relationship, like having a similar sort of time awake schedule is quite interesting. And myself and Banner haven't figured out quite how to get that perfect, right? Because if I wake up early, then it distracts her, and if I go to bed early, then I can't really go to sleep sort of nicely. So I think that's like quite a interesting sort of basis. And how did you develop that? Is it just like persistence? I know obviously your room is probably like a big factor, is that it's got lots of natural light and probably like wakes you up quite easily.
When you go to bed and trying to set those routines is like, yes, I am fairly lucky that Emma and I have the same bedtime wake up schedule roughly. That really helps. It is the reason that I wake up so early is because I go to bed early. Like, yeah, sure, every now and then on a weekend or even during the week, I might go to bed a bit later because I'm socializing or something. But most nights I'm like firmly in bed by 9 p.m. and it is lovely. And the reason that it's lovely is that I wake up at 6 a.m. naturally. Like, this isn't a struggle for me to get out of bed. People who have a hard time getting up at 9, it's because they're still doing they're not going to bed. Sorry, who struggle getting up at 6. It's because they're going to bed too late. Like, it's the only way that you can consistently wake up early is by going to bed early if you don't want to be sleep deprived.
It's becoming more of a discipline thing. And back to like what we were originally talking about is the discipline. I've also started sort of reframed motivation and inspiration into like this idea of discipline, of like I'm gonna take some time, almost in the same form of like, Atomic Habits and stuff like that. I'm going to take the time and sort of dedicate to doing something consistently. And over time, from doing that, it becomes easier, right? I mean, it's similar with waking up, like you wake up early for like 10 days or like 20 days, and then suddenly it becomes a lot easier. But I think going from like, just, I don't know, not doing that to doing that is means that you've got a lot of like very early mornings, and then your significant others may be like a bit grumpy because you've like your alarm's going off, and it's kind of like it's not as easy to get into that rhythm as it were. But I am looking at it more from the I'm just going to be more dedicated to this, or I'm just going to be more sort of like outcome focused. And that's, I think, yielding some results in that I've now got this sort of like almost like a diary, but it's more just like a sort of checklist where every day I just check whether I've done something or not. And the idea is to try and get like a row of like checks, and that's kind of like the goal. And I'm also starting to track my sort of like the time that I actually sit down, because I think that's also helped in that like, every time that every, as the time goes on, I know I've not like clocked in a sense. And so it almost acts as like a sort of definite starting point to my day, where I don't necessarily have a routine point. Um, it does help me to kind of like switch into that, like, okay, work mode starts now.
Yeah, I hear you. I think one of the reasons that I really like the morning is because, firstly, I'm fresh, right? Like every now and then I try to, no, not every now and then. I haven't tried this in years, but I can't gym in the evenings or the afternoons because my day gets away from me. As I said, like after lunch, it's a free for all. I'm doing work. I need to go to the shops. I'm having a meeting with someone, etc., etc., and I cannot control my evenings. Like, yes, I can schedule plans here and there, but then I'm like, can I get into the gym before I have this dinner date? Like, can I get a good workout in over there? And so I know that those are, I don't want to say out of my control, but they're chaotic. They're not the same every day. Whereas the mornings I can very, very much control. There's also a second thing is that, I'm not too interested in watching Netflix. Um, and so if I don't have like explicit social plans in the evening, I'm happy to get into bed at 9 p.m. Like I, I, I'll read my book for 15 minutes and I'll fall asleep. Uh, Also, I have really good sleep hygiene. Like my room is dark. I don't really go in there except for to sleep and extracurricular activities. And because of that, as soon as I'm in my bed, I'm like, my body's like, oh, this is the place where you sleep, and off I go.
I mean, that I think that is quite critical. Have there ever been days where it didn't go right, or like what are kind of like some of the antagonistic parts? Because also you like travel around, and like when you're in a different country, it's maybe not as easy to kind of get into that same routine. And so where are the cases where you've maybe like gone off schedule, and what I mean, illness probably is one I can guess, but like what are the kind of like things that take you off the routine, and then how do you get back on track?
Yeah, I feel you. So yeah, when I'm sick, I'm sick, right? Like I'm gonna stay in bed all day. I'm gonna go to the shower, go take a shower. I'm gonna lie on the couch. I'm gonna be miserable,
And you call your
right?
boss and say, I'm not coming in.
Yeah, but my boss is a bit of an asshole. He'll be like, "You're coming
Leave,
in." No. Um,
leave yourself a voice note.
so yesterday was actually a really interesting day. So I went and I did the usual things that I do, had a nice coffee, went to the gym, came back with some brekkie, and then uh, I was made aware that my gym is closing at the end of September. And that kind of like pulled the rug out from underneath me a little bit, and it like left me a little bit frazzled. Because I'm like, wow, that is actually like a sort of like a basis of my morning routine, or it plays a large part of there. And I've been going to the same gym for the last 3 years, and now I'm gonna have to find something else. I might have to go to like a commercial gym. Ugh. But then there's construction going around me in my area. Literally 3 places are getting remodeled right now. So there's just angle grinders going, and angle grinders tear my soul apart. And so the rest of the morning, I tried to get into work. Well, first I was looking at gyms, and I tried to get into work, and I couldn't do it, and I couldn't do it, and I ended up like just having a write-off of a morning and most of the day. And then the angle grinders finally stopped at around 4, and I had a little nap, and then I managed to actually get some work done. Not as much as I would have liked, but that's a good example of it going off the rails. The fundamental point though is that the next day I went and I did the exact same thing, but instead of working from home, I went and I worked from town where there aren't currently angle grinders going on. And it worked out really well. However, when I travel, Emma and I, we both kind of do have to be productive because we are working while we're traveling. And so whenever we get to a new city, is we do find a place that works out pretty well for us to work at. And we just become a regular there. We like show up there 5 days a week, whether it be a co-working space or a coffee shop that's amicable to us working from there. And we also find gyms wherever we go. And that's actually quite fun because you get to like
Yeah.
sample gyms in different countries. Like the gyms in Vietnam are very different to the gyms in Bali, which are very different to the gyms in South Africa, which are, every gym is fairly unique. And so we'll go to the gym. What like when we're in. Oh, funny other thing that we do when we travel is we actually bring our own little pour over, so we can make a little coffee in the room and still do the whole like 45 minutes of waking up together. No matter where we are, we still have our little pour over, and then go to the gym, go and do some work, and then the afternoon is wherever it takes us.
Mm. And do you find that the routine sometimes makes you a little bit sort of less resistant to a sort of random event? Like, do you find that like you said, your gym's like closed down, and that's like kind of like a something that you don't expect, and then it becomes like something that kind of messes up your whole day? Do you see that often, or how do you incorporate things like spontaneity into something that's quite what sounds like quite a structured, rigid routine?
It's not super rigid, and to be entirely honest, is like I'm you know I think I was more bummed about my gym than anything else, and like yeah, I have to go and find another one. But at the end of the day, it's less about me like being super strict hustle bro Herman, and instead just doing things that make me feel good. So waking up with a nice long coffee and going and working out and having a breakfast and journaling. It's like those can be done anywhere. Okay, yeah, not everywhere has a gym, and I have a very hard time working out at like a hotel room or something like that. Um, but overall, it's like it is fairly dynamic. I'm gonna have coffee anyway. If I don't have coffee, that's the one thing that is unfortunately like I am dependent on caffeine, and there have been a few niche instances where I haven't had caffeine at wherever I was. I'm like, oh no, we have to actually go out to a cafe and get some coffee. Otherwise, this is going to
Yeah.
be a tough morning. But overall, no, I haven't had any major issues with like my things deviating from my routine.
Hmm. And to kind of change tack a bit to sort of goal setting, and how you kind of pick which tasks to do. One of the things I've been thinking about is there's a balance between the stuff that's kind of working and then exploring new ideas. Um, do you have strategies, or how do you think about it? And are you sort of doing kind of sprint-based planning, or like how are you kind of structuring the things that you work on? I mean, like you've just said earlier that you don't necessarily have to do things, but like are you setting like monthly goals, or are you setting like annual plans? Like what if something like sparks your imagination? Like how much time do you dedicate to it? Is this all done while you're at the gym? Like how do you decide what to work on, and what have you found as the best balance between working on what is existing versus exploring new ideas? Because just to take my sort of experience is that obviously like being in tech, working in sort of programming, like AI is all over and there's lots of like bright, shiny things to do. And so it's kind of like there's a tendency to kind of want to work on a lot of different things. It could just be like, not being able to focus very much, but there's obviously like there's things that you want to try and like see out a little bit and see if they actually work versus like maybe this is going to be a quicker path, or like how do you balance those
Hmm.
two kind of different goals, I guess.
That's a really good question, and I'm susceptible to shiny object syndrome, like many people in our industry. What I have this does kind of come down a bit to discipline because it is much easier to get sidetracked and try and start a new thing than to sit and do the thing that actually matters. And it's really about being logical about it and thinking about it. It's much easier to go from, 10,000 to 20,000 than it is to go from zero to one. And so I currently have like a pretty good thing going on, and so I need to nurture it. However, that doesn't mean that I don't explore new ideas. I actually have a whole Trello board of ideas that I do want to explore, and every time a new one comes to me, I'll pop it on that Trello board and I'll write a description of what it is I think. And at some point in the future, I'll every now and then I pick one out and I explore it fully. You can see a bunch of my little projects that are doing exactly that on my personal website. Um, but for example, right now I'm working on Bear pretty much full time. And so I try to ship one thing every workday. This could be, a portion of a larger feature, or it could be a bug fix that needed work, or anything that fits into a day, right? And I can decide what, like, if I have done that, but the general consensus is if I work on something consistently for 2 hours, like I've shipped something, right? And I've actually pushed that code. However, every now and then I do want to explore a new idea. So, for example, this morning I woke up quite early and I had an hour or so just by myself, and I started thinking about bot mitigation because there are currently bots that are hammering every part of the internet trying to scrape it dry. And a lot of these bots are actually fairly malicious, like they're scraping endpoints to try and find exploits in your server. And so I was thinking of, you know, uh, putting in a little proof of work algorithm to make it financially less easy for people to scrape at scale. I was thinking of some or other form of captcha where you like kind of pinky promise that you're not a bot. I was thinking of using redirects in a interesting way. And then, that's where I kind of like stumbled on the whole thing. Like, there are some endpoints that a regular user will never hit. I have bots that will try and scrape like 500 PHP files. Bear isn't even PHP, but it tries to scrape all these PHP files because they are common WordPress exploits. So it's just testing all the sites to see if any of them are WordPress and if it hasn't been secured properly. So they hit my rate limiter. So I've written some code that if something hits my rate limiter and it's requesting PHP files, then I serve them with a auto-expanding what's called a zip bomb that as soon as it tries to process it, it expands from 10 megabytes to 10 gigabytes, right? And that'll use up all the scraper's resources and the scrape stops. So I went and I fiddled around with that the entire day and I explored it to the extent that I actually tested it on production a couple of times and it works perfectly fine. Right now I'm just wondering if this is really like if I really want to join this arms race because I could just rate limit it and let it be, but there's a part of me that's like, hey, fuck you, you can't be scraping my stuff.
Yeah. I think I don't know if you saw, but the CEO of Cloudflare has come out as like he's pretty
Pretty hardcore, huh?
yeah, pro like protecting of copyright and all of those kind of things. And it'd be quite interesting the way that I think they're going about it as almost like if you're on Cloudflare and someone scrapes, they have to pay a token because they've obviously got this network effect where they can kind of get the providers and the sort of scrapers to kind of work together. But it's probably, would solve that. But when you came to that idea, like, did you say upfront, oh, I'm going to spend this amount of time on it? Or is it just something that was a rabbit hole that all of a sudden you spend the whole day doing it? Because what I'm also trying to think of is like sometimes I'm excited about a project, I'm working on a feature, but then it's like I've already spent 2 hours on it. And then I'm like, well, do I go that extra hour and like maybe like complete the feature? Because certain things like I was doing like a login flow or I was doing something like that, and it's like it doesn't quite work yet, and I really can't like leave it to be and just like move on to something else. But like, do you allocate time to this new idea? Because
Yeah,
it's
like I
things
wouldn't
like
have
this.
spent more than one day on it unless I had come to the conclusion in the first day that this is a thing that I'm going to implement properly.
And did you scope it out? Did you like when you said like, oh, that's an interesting idea? Did you do like a Google Doc or something to like figure out, or was it just like, let me just try it and I'm gonna,
Let me just try it. Yeah.
and end of the
Yeah.
day, you just like, well, obviously it worked for you, but has there ever been something that's like not quite worked, or
Oh yeah, lots
you
of
just
times.
like
Lots
scrap it and like screw that, I'm
completely.
gonna do something else tomorrow.
And that's kind of it. And so that's actually one of the nice things about trying to trying to release something every day, trying to push a slight refinement or a slight fix or a feature or something every day, is that, sometimes what you're working on is a bit of a dud and it gets scrapped, but like you're back at it again the next day and you try and do it again, and that might be a dud as well. But if we extrapolate over what about 200 working days in a year, that's 200 minor refinements. And I actually think, like, at the current stage of my project where it's not huge incremental change, sorry, it's not huge changes that are happening all the time. It's actually like little incremental changes. It's kind of like the difference between being a early, like a new lifter or being an intermediate or an advanced lifter is that when you first start lifting weights, like you're really sore, but you can like feel progress. You start seeing the little muscles pop out, you're pumped all the time. But once you've been doing it for a few years, like each individual workout is has a negligible effect, right? So you kind of just have to trust the process because if you stop working out, like obviously you're gonna lose your gains, bro. Um, and but like it's just going in and kind of trusting the process. And so that's what it is right now. It's like I'll push a tiny update that it has essentially no effect on the platform. It has no effect on my income, but 200 incremental changes. Now that's real improvement over a year. That's actually pretty serious. And so it's really just kind of trusting in the process, but you have to create the process first. Yeah, and then you have to believe in it.
That is true. And I think maybe almost to kind of bring it to a close, for those, I guess, indies who are still building for the first time, who haven't reached the sort of ramen profitability or the sort of even below that, or, haven't got to quite, enough to quit their jobs, how do you suggest people like that take on this idea of whether they should progress with an idea versus pick a new idea?
Very, very good question again.
Because I guess in that case, there's a bit more like not panic, but there's a little bit more pressure because I guess once you've got something going, it's very easy to kind of say, okay, well, let's dive into all these like little like avenues here and there. It's kind of like when you listen to Tim Ferriss, he's like, backpacking through some weird like location, or he's doing some sort of like experiment on himself. But like if you haven't made that point yet, where's that sort of delineation between continue versus change path?
That's a great question, and I think I'm currently at the point where I'm privileged in what I've built to follow interesting ideas to their logical conclusions. But in the beginning, I think where a good place to start is there's an article by Jason Cohen, who's the founder of WP Engine and A Smart Bear, where he talks about SLCs, which are like MVPs, like minimum viable products, except they are simple, lovable, and complete. And the thesis over there is that you pare down the features until you've created something that is technically, or that would be complete, and you don't have any of those extra features. You just find the core functionality, like the main game mechanic, and you figure out how do I get there? And so it's easy to pick up, go down rabbit holes or pick up threads and be like, oh, I'm going to try and follow this. But unless you have an SLC done, then you need to reframe what it is you're doing towards that. Once you've got something that works and that people can use, then you can start following all the other little odds and ends. But you just need to get something up and running that people can use and then iterate from there.
Yeah. That's very, very good advice, I think. And I think it's like something that maybe a lot of people need to kind of ingest. Because in a world where there's so many different opportunities, I think it's like becoming almost impossible to kind of like just commit, right, to
Yeah.
a single idea.
This actually does bring me back to when I was mentoring startups up in Ghana, and this also applies to working out. I think that there's so many correlations over here, but it is bite off less than you can chew, right? Don't bite off as much as you can chew, like bite off less because you want to carry on chewing. You don't want to accidentally bite off too much, right? And so like one of the main pieces of advice with working out is like if you think you can go to the gym 4 days a week, but like realistically you'll be able to get to the gym twice a week consistently. Only go twice a week, right? Because you don't want to start missing gym days. So instead it's, you know, I am doing 2 days a week. And then later you can build it up to 3 days a week. But don't try and do four, but instead find yourself doing two. Because then it becomes nothing. And with startups, especially in their early phases, it's like simplify. You're trying to do too much too soon. You need to cut down all these other things that you're doing and just figure out the core functionality and focus on that.
Yeah. And what about the sort of uh, feel good feeling. So, for instance, you might feel motivated by a certain idea, and this is also again pre-revenue or pre like sort of ramen profitability. Like some people say, like, well, if I'm not enthusiastic about it, maybe I shouldn't be working on it. Do you think that's bullshit, or do you think there's an element of truth to that? Because I guess finding what to work on is just as important as working on the thing, right?
I think that there definitely needs to be some excitement somewhere. However, it's very rare to always be excited about something. And so you can't rely on it. And that's why we need commitment and why we need discipline, because motivation is fleeting and excitement is also fleeting. It can burn hard and it can burn for a long time, but like at some point it's not going to be there. And you just need to be able to show up and do the thing that you need to do regardless.
Yeah, exactly. This has been great. Nice chatting.